All right, today we are going to deconstruct one of the most complex and honestly most damaging forms of social interaction, manipulation. And I'm not just talking about simple lies, we're diving deep into the sophisticated construction of false realities, worlds that are designed specifically to control you. So let's start with how our bodies, our own systems, first detect this kind of threat.
And that's really the core truth, isn't it? You often don't hear the manipulation in the words themselves, you feel it. It shows up as this kind of intuition, this dissonance in a conversation that you just can't quite put your finger on. Trust me, that feeling, that's your first and most reliable line of defense. You have to learn to trust it.
You know, long before your conscious mind can even begin to process what's wrong, your body already knows. A good way to think of it is as a somatic glitch, like a physical error signal. Your nervous system flags a threat, and you feel it. Maybe as a sudden tightness in your chest, or that familiar knot in your stomach. It's this precognitive alarm, a really deep-seated instinct, just screaming that the data you're receiving is corrupted.
Now, this is where we have to shift our thinking. We're not talking about your garden variety liars here. We're talking about architects. These people don't just state a falsehood. They meticulously build an entire world around you, a warped context where their lie isn't just plausible, it's the only logical conclusion you could possibly draw. See, they aren't just breaking the rules of the game, they're creating a whole new game board where they've already won.
So, to even begin to dismantle this architecture, you have to learn to ignore the emotional chaos, all that noise, and instead analyze the underlying structure of the exchange. There are three primary exploits they use to bypass your critical thinking.
So the first exploit is what's called the double bind. And this is that classic no-win loop, a choice where your own autonomy is just a carefully constructed illusion. Every single path they present to you leads to a negative outcome, one that they've already decided on.
This right here, this is a perfect catch-22. If you decide to express your feelings, well, you're immediately labeled too sensitive. But if you stay quiet to try and keep the peace, now you're accused of being emotionally distant. No matter what you do, it's the wrong move. You're being systematically cornered.
So the really crucial point here is the effect this has on your brain. It literally paralyzes your critical thinking. You end up wasting just immense amounts of mental energy trying to solve a problem that is, by its very design, unsolvable. And the dead giveaway, you feel completely and utterly drained after what should have been a simple conversation. You find yourself constantly having to justify your most basic actions and feelings. Okay, the second exploit is intermittent reinforcement. The best analogy for this is a slot machine. The manipulator just oscillates between this intense affection, what's often called love bombing, and then sudden, cold withdrawal. And the real key here is its total unpredictability. You see, consistency builds security. Inconsistency, well, that breeds addiction.
And this tactic is so incredibly powerful because it directly hijacks your brain's dopamine reward system. It is neurochemically identical to a gambling addiction. You're not staying for the reward itself, but for the possibility of the reward. The result? You're in this state of constant hypervigilance, just walking on eggshells, trying to decode their every mood to avoid the withdrawal and get back to that high.
The third major exploit is called triangulation. This is where the manipulator introduces a third party into the dynamic. It could be an ex, a colleague, even a totally hypothetical rival. But you have to understand, this is never actually about that third person. It is purely about manufacturing conflict and instability between you and the manipulator.
Its mechanism is, well, it's basically psychological economics. It creates an artificial scarcity of a resource, let's say their approval or their attention, that you previously felt you had in abundance. So all of a sudden, you feel like you're in a competition you never even signed up for, fighting to prove your value against some rival who, more often than not, is just a pawn in their game.
So after seeing all these tactics laid out, it becomes pretty clear that a direct argument is just futile. You're simply not playing by the same rules. So the question then becomes, if you can't win the argument, what is the right move?
And that brings us to the defense protocols. Let's be really clear about this. The goal here is not to win. The goal is pattern disruption. It's about fundamentally refusing to play the game on their terms anymore.
So the first and absolutely most important rule is to stop jading. That's J-A-D-E. Do not justify, argue, defend, or explain. Because every single time you do any of those things, you validate their false premise. You agree that your reality, your feelings, and your perceptions are somehow up for debate, and they are not.
So what do you do instead? Well, your first protocol is a technique called fogging. This is a pretty sophisticated verbal maneuver, kind of like verbal judo.
You agree with any part of their statement that you can, even if it's just in principle. The key is you validate their feeling without accepting their flawed premise.
Here is a perfect example. They attack with, "You never care about my time." Now, instead of jumping in to defend yourself with all the examples of when you did, you simply respond, "I can see why you feel that way." And then, silence. You've just acknowledged their emotion, which completely disarms them, but you have admitted zero fault. The manipulative loop is broken.
All right, now for Protocol Beta, the gray rock method. This one is all about emotional conservation. You make yourself as boring and uninteresting as a plain gray rock. You have to remember, manipulators feed on emotional reactions, good or bad. It doesn't matter to them. This method starves them of their supply. So when they ask one of those emotionally loaded, totally unanswerable questions like, "Why do you always try to hurt me?" the gray rock response is a closed, factual statement. "I am not trying to hurt you." Full stop. No further explanation. You give them nothing to grip onto, nothing to feed on.
And finally, we have Protocol Gamma, the audit. This is your #1 defense against gaslighting. Because manipulators work tirelessly to erode your trust in your own memory, you absolutely must create an external, objective record of reality. This means saving screenshots of texts, keeping a journal of events, even making voice memos for yourself.
And this right here is the key takeaway for this entire protocol. When you feel yourself starting to doubt your own sanity, that external record becomes your anchor. It's the hard data that serves as the antidote to the poison of internal doubt.
So this brings us to the final phase. After recognizing the mechanics and learning some of the defenses, we have to kind of zoom out and reevaluate the ultimate objective. I mean, what does it really mean to win here? Here's the core truth of this whole thing. Engaging a master manipulator in an argument is like trying to play chess with someone who just rewrites the rules every single time you're about to checkmate them. It is an impossible, completely unwinnable game.
So the ultimate goal isn't to out-manipulate the manipulator. It's not to finally win that one argument. The only real victory, the only path to reclaiming your autonomy and your sense of reality is to disengage completely. Your goal is to just stop playing their game.
And so we're going to end with this one question for you to really reflect on. Take an honest look at the dynamics in your life, at those conversations that leave you feeling exhausted and confused. And just ask yourself, whose reality are you living in? Is it yours, or is it one that was built for you?